I want people to not like me, because that means I don't have to be like you.
What horrible thing could have possibly happened for this individual to say such things? And even crazier, what made her undergo over 20 surgeries in order to not look like us? This is the disturbing case of Tiamat Medusa, the man who transformed himself into a genderless dragon. Tiamat was born a male, Richard Hernandez Jr., and from a young age he was a victim of abuse at the hands of his awful stepfather. When he was 5 years old, Richard was shunned by his family and abandoned in the woods. His only friends were animals. Years passed, and by the time he was 18, he had rekindled his relationship with his mother. Or so he thought, because one night after work, something horrific happened.
I remember calling my mom, and I said, well, okay, I'm done with work. Are you gonna come get me now? She said, no. I said, oh, I know what's happened. So you can't come get me because your husband doesn't let you.
Not having anywhere to go, Richard hung outside of the bus station, where he was then approached by a random man asking what he was doing. After explaining the situation, the man said,
I live right across the street. If you would like, you can come spend the night at my place. And I said, okay, I trusted this man.
And that turned out to be a huge mistake, because Richard was then taken to the apartment and taken advantage of by the man and his partner. This traumatic experience only deepened his disdain towards humans and desire to separate himself from mankind. However, despite all of the setbacks, Richard found success in the banking industry, starting out as a clerk and fast forward 15 years later, moving his way up the corporate ladder. At the height of his so-called previous life, he became a hotshot vice president of a bank. And while many people would be beyond happy having such a prestigious job along with great pay, Richard just couldn't catch a break, because the next terrifying thing that happened altered the direction of his life permanently. In 1997, while being at the pinnacle of his career, Richard was diagnosed with HIV. At that point, he thought he was gonna die, and there was no way he was gonna leave this earth looking like humans, because humans had always been the cause of his suffering. So when Richard got the bad news, he quit his job and began his transformation. His goal was to completely change himself into a genderless dragon, and there was two main reasons to become this particular creature. For one, it was in honor of the reptiles who took care of him when he was abandoned as a kid, and the second was for his son. Because before all of this, Richard had a baby boy, and when the boy grew up into a teenager, their relationship fell apart. Since his son loved dragons, Richard was hoping that transforming himself into this creature would cause his kid to look at him as something beautiful, instead of the man who made mistakes and wasn't the perfect dad in his life. And so he began. It all started out with a pair of $400 horns. Next came the 10 eyebrow implants in order to bring out the forehead, giving off a more reptilian look. After that, we have his tattoo journey, covering his face and body in ink with hopes of eventually finishing a full-blown bodysuit inspired by the western diamondback rattlesnake. And a little while later, he removed his ears.
You know, I'm a serpent dragon, and serpents don't have ears.
While we're at it, they don't have human noses either, which is why his nose was reshaped into a dragon's nose. Following those procedures came the tongue split, and realistically, that one was obviously expected. His eyeballs were then tattooed green, and don't think we forgot about the removal of the majority of his teeth. He actually only now has 6 left, and made sure to sharpen those 6 to get that animalistic look. But the real interesting thing here is that he can't chew his food, so anytime he eats, he mashes the food up with his gums and then swallows it, saying it's kind of similar to how a snake does. However, it doesn't stop there, because the goal is to remove all of his teeth completely in order to replace them with dental implants designed to look like dragon's teeth. All of this cost him over $83,000, but by now, he was no longer known as Richard. This transformation had buried the man he once used to be. You could now use the term it, and it went by the name of Tiamat Legion Medusa. Tiamat has removed its testes, and one of its next modifications is to get rid of the final male organ. This action caused Tiamat to feel fully reborn, claiming it's the happiest it's ever been, And now, after 12 years of being single, it's open to the idea of finding love and start dating again. Obviously, the ideal partner must identify as a reptile, but in fact, its taste in human men is the total opposite of what you might think. You may assume Tiamat wants someone who's fully tatted up and has a ton of body mods. However, much to your surprise, Tiamat doesn't want that at all. It wants someone with no tattoos and no modifications of any sorts, which realistically could be rather hard to find. But with all the interesting characters in the world today, there's always someone for everyone. And if you're wondering how Tiamat makes all its money looking like this, well, the answer is, it's an artist and performer. The end goal for Tiamat is to have its transformation fully complete by the year 2025.